persistent, although it was difficult to hear over the wail of the storm. Saturday night, Beltane. Timothy and Sarah were home alone. Their parents had left hours ago for the artist's reception. Despite the date, it had been a normal Saturday, and Timothy wasn't sure whether to be grateful or disappointed. And then the wind had started blowing. It never stormed like this in the spring. Who would come knocking on a night like this? "I don't think you should open that." Sarah's voice was sharp. The cat Prank arched her back and hissed. Timothy looked through the peephole in the door, straight into the face of Mrs. Clapper. Now you have to know that Mrs. Clapper is an older woman in her 70s who used to babysit them when they were younger. Why was she out in this storm? He opened the door, and the wind pushed in like an uninvited guest, howling its displeasure. Disheveled, Mrs. Clapper stood on the steps, wisps of gray hair, wild, and she carried a willow basket on one arm. "Your parents are going to be late. They called and asked me to check on you, too." Her voice was calm, and her eyes gleamed. She likes this storm, Timothy thought. Sarah looked over his shoulder. "Come in," Timothy offered. "Oh, no. I think it's far better that you come out," Mrs. Clapper replied. Then Timothy saw something peering from behind her cloak. A golden-furred wolf. He took a step back, right onto Sarah's toes. "Come into the storm. We haven't had one like this in years," Mrs. Clapper continued. "And we have business to attend to." Timothy's mouth opened and he swallowed a gulp of air. Did he just see what he thought he saw? "What's wrong with her?" Sarah hissed into his ear. "Okay," she said more loudly, looking right at Mrs. Clapper. Didn't Sarah see the wolf? He wondered. Sarah grabbed a sweatshirt from the hook by the door and ran outside. Timothy tried to hold her back, but his voice failed him. Mrs. Clapper turned to stare out across the lawn. The wolf was gone, but strapped on her back was a quiver full of arrows and a bow. Mrs. Clapper had lost her mind. There could be no other explanation. He couldn't let Sarah go out there alone with her. As soon as he stepped out on the porch, the door slammed shut behind him. The wind swirled with voices. Clouds scurried across the sky, covering and then revealing a sliver of moon. He shivered in his t-shirt. The temperature was dropping fast. "I think you should come in," he pleaded. And then the wolf, with gleaming yellow eyes, poked its head out from under Mrs. Clapper's cloak and growled. Now, as Timothy and Sarah follow her into the storm, they find out that their life is going to take some very unusual twists and turns. And by the way, Beyond the Door, the first In Time Out of Time series, is written for middle grade, 9 to 14-year-olds. And if you look at the bottom of the book, there is a code in Ogham, in ancient Irish, and there's a way for decoding that at the back of the book, and it gives readers a little bit more information about some of the mythic characters in the book. And almost all these characters turn out to be a little bit more than meets the eye, especially Mrs. Clapper.